Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm the Takanome, and welcome to my humble slices of the internet that are my Twitch and YouTube channels. How is everyone doing today? Hope that you're having a good day today, hopefully a good weekend, a good week even. And if that has not been the case for you, hopefully this reading stream could be a bit of a bright spot to your day. For those who are familiars here, you know that tonight we'll be reading from the same series, the Clockwork Twist series, Book 10, Time by Emily Thompson. For those who may be new to the reading stream, well, every Sunday evening, well, as much as I can do for every Sunday, we continue to go through a series, a book, story, anything like that, and we just read it to enjoy the story as well as potentially voice acting. Now, for those who may not know who Emily Thompson is, the author of tonight's book, allow me the opportunity to, well, introduce them to you by their bio. Emily Thompson is a non binary author and artist originally from Northern California. Although they adore steampunk and all things Victoriana, they also write science fiction and fantasy. After studying film and animation in university, Emily changed to a Japanese language focus and studied in Tokyo. After receiving a language degree and spending a number of years abroad, they now live in Washington and spend most of their free time writing in coffee shops, painting, crocheting plushies, coding, and playing lots of cozy video games. And that is our author for the evening. Now, I could definitely say that Emily Thompson is a wonderful person. I know them personally, even had some of the same classes in Japan together with them. And we definitely made some memories together. For example, going to a rock concert together. That was fun. But those are stories for another time. I have the book ready to go. But before we start, let's see, do we have any news for this channel? Well, again, if you happen to remember this, I mentioned that August 3rd, so the first Sunday of August, there will be no reading stream because I'll be going to a farewell party for, I would say local. They're not too local to me, but I'll say a local do-it-yourself car repair garage. It's a place that I particularly enjoy going to since coming back to Chicago. It's the only one in the city that I know of, and honestly, I believe that shop was a godsend. And I'm sad to see it close down, but I'm happy that I had the opportunity to meet wonderful people there and the opportunity to work on my car safely. So I will be going to that going away party on August 3rd, thus no reading stream that day. Another day in August where we may not have the reading stream, I believe is, let's look at the date here, August 17th. August 17th happens to fall on what I like to call my anniversary week. So Miss Taka and I are planning to do something special for our anniversary this year. We would have been married for, gotta do the math, 12 years. 12 years now. And not only that, around that time would be the 20-year anniversary of the first time we met. We met about 20 years ago when we were but wee lads in university. Well, lads and lasses. Lads and lasses. Sure, let's go with that one. When we were but wee adults discovering the world for the first time on our own, that is the first time we met. So we will probably be celebrating that as well. So again, August 3rd, August 17th, more than likely, there will be no reading stream on those two Sundays. everything permitting, all the other Sundays, we will have the reading stream, same time, 8 o'clock, 8 Eastern. To specify 8 p.m. Eastern Time, just in case that was not clear. Other news. Ashley, yes, there is actually other news for the Twitch channel. For those who may be listening to YouTube, you may not know that I have, well, a Twitch channel, but I did more on the Twitch channel than just the reading stream. I also did game streams as well. So I took a hiatus from streaming games for the past couple of months, and I'm thinking about slowly bringing them back in. However, more than likely, it'll still just be one day out of the week if I do the gaming stream, and I will be sticking more than likely to Metroid games or randomizers. So if you are interested in watching, I won't say a rank amateur, but let's say a pretty advanced amateur play randomizers and Metroid and so on and so forth, feel free to stop by my Twitch channel. I had one other thing I want. Oh, I am workshopping this. I am thinking about extending the reading stream. However, it won't be the reading stream per se. I have considered, so those who may not know, I am also an author. I have read my own book on the reading stream before. And when book 2 is ready to come out, or when it's ready, I will be reading my second book on the stream here as well. However, I am still working, well, I'm still working on book 2 as far as edits go, but we are working on book 3 as far as getting that outlined. And I have other story ideas that I would like to write out one day. So, with all of that said, one thing I've considered is tacking an extra hour to the reading stream, probably before the reading stream starts, and just do a quick writing session stream, something like that. Maybe where people can see me write, brainstorm, come up with some ideas, work out plot issues, and so on and so forth. Just another way to show what else I do outside of games, I suppose. It is a thought. I have not fully committed to it because that will be a commitment, but it is a thought I have mulling in the back of my mind. What is that? I'm not sure what that is. I will explore that later. But we have our tea ready to go. We have our bottle of water nearby just in case. Let me flip my phone around so I won't be distracted. And I believe we are about ready to go. Oh, no, we're not, because before we go into the story, we have to do a recap, not only of the last chapter, but also a little recap of this series. This is so that if you're new to the story, or if this is your first time, maybe we can, well, get you up to speed a little bit. Now, this does not give away all the spoilers, but there's a couple of spoilers here. Nevertheless, despite the spoilers, I certainly think this book and the series is worth the read. It is light, fun, thrilling, I would even say, and my favorite part, I cannot guess what will happen next. And I enjoy stories where it doesn't feel cookie cutter, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel like, oh, I have an idea what the beats to the story is. I know that, okay, I see what's happening, but I know everything's going to turn out well, that kind of thing, which, of course, more than likely, plot armor protects our main character, so we have an idea things will work out. But there are other aspects to the series where I was like, oh, I did not see that coming. Oh, well, that's interesting. So, I cannot recommend this series enough. And I do not say this just because the author is my friend. This is one of those, yes, I've read the series. I started reading this back in 2016, I believe. Fell off because of life, got back on, and I am so happy I did. So, a recap of this series so far. For most of his life, Twist was alone. His sight, his special ability, allowed him to see how something is broken when he makes physical contact with it. This includes dramatic experiences of other people. He had resigned himself to solitude in his little London clock shop. His world changed when a young woman entered his shop and enlisted his help to mend the mythical Clockwork Princess. Since then, he had traveled around the world and encountered all manners of strange and mythical beings with the dashing pirate and the Clockwork Princess by his side. It is not all fun and games. There are powerful forces searching for him and his prior friend. Many attempts have been made on their lives. Nonetheless, they have persevered, and Twist's bonds with his companions only grow stronger. On their way to Argentina after meeting Twist's father, Twist and his friends learn a startling revelation. In the future, there will be no one who can use sights. Twist struggles to come to terms with this information. Without a sight, it will be significantly harder to repair anything, let alone his beautiful Clockwork Princess fiancée. For now, Twist can only continue his journey and learn more about his own past. That is the recap that we have for tonight. Going to take a sip of water before we begin. I can feel my mouth drying out a little bit. Mama, 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 mama. Hoping that works. All right. I believe we are ready to start. This is Clockwork Twist, Book 10, Time by Emily Thompson. We are on page 105. With that, fingers crossed we don't have a lot of mirror lines. Let's begin. The airship did indeed look rather like a flying pagoda. The body of the airship appeared to have three eight-sided floors of a gradually decreasing size, stacked one on top of another with arching black tile roofs on each level, all hanging under a single round balloon. The balloon was the color of a pale morning sky with an image of a bird in flight painted on one side. The walls of the building were painted a bright red, and while the upper two floors sported circular windows under their upturned eaves, and the open bottom floor bore four large archways that faced each other like the points of a compass, a thin black railing stood at the edge of the ring-like balcony that surrounded the bottom floor, and below the ship appeared perfectly flat and featureless. Twist and his crew watched the other airship approach and then come to a stop just beside them. Jonas had noticed the open nature of the other airship and asked Kima to bring their own height down to meet them. When Kima and Jonas opened the hatch-like door at the side of the glass-covered deck, the air that rushed inside struck Twist as cool, fresh, and scented with salt, but not uncomfortable at all. Standing beside Twist with everyone else on the Icarus, Mira gave a delighted tone and waved as Sky appeared on the balcony of the other ship. Sky looked exactly as she had the last time Twist had seen her. Her brilliant amber-colored hair was still cut as short as a boy's. She still wore the clothing of a man, a simple cotton shirt, silver trousers, sturdy boots, and a tight red waistcoat that obscured her womanly figure, and her blue eyes shone with a reckless light. Miguel, Robin, and Pummeled all gasped when a fully grown orange and black striped tiger padded into view and sat beside Sky. But Twist, Jonas, Mira, and even Kima had all been previously introduced to Sky's familiar, Kali. Twist noticed two men aboard the other airship, just as Jonas had mentioned. One of them young, the other as old as Twist's father. The young man held a large helm wheel steady inside the open room on the lower level, while the older helped Sky to toss ropes across the 3-foot gap to the Icarus. Jonas and Kima secured the two airships to each other, leaving only a single foot between the two. The moment this connection was made, however, Kali leaped across, through the open door and in the side of the Icarus, and nearly knocked Jonas full on his back. The tiger landed easily while Jonas caught his footing, but the beast turned its huge, shiny brown eyes on Twist and lunged for him with a short growl. Terror shot through Twist, and he froze in animal panic as the massive tiger lifted herself up on her hind feet, planted her huge furry front paws on his shoulders, and licked at his face with an enormous rough pink tongue. Twist sputtered and yelped in fright and confusion, struggling to contend with the animal's weight on his shoulders while also trying to push her away to stop himself drowning in her hot, sticky saliva. Kali dropped back and away from him, while the sound of bright laughter met Twist's bruised senses. He wiped at his face and tried to catch his breath, finally able to see Sky now standing on the deck and holding Kali still by the scruff of her neck. Sorry, sugar, Sky said around her laughter, her American accent making her words sound as quick and careless as ever. Kali really missed you. I can tell, Twist muttered, still finding slick spots on his face and trying to wipe at them with damp hands. Kali broke free of Sky's grasp and moved for Twist again, but this time she seemed happy to only throw her huge, muscular shoulder at his legs and nearly knock him over. She nuzzled at him and started to let out a low, deep rumbling sound as Twist found his handkerchief and did a better job of drying his face. He reached down to pat at her soft, warm fur and smiled as he shook his head. He glanced up to see everyone else watching them, but his father's face was pale, his mouth hanging open. The distraction of Kali's affectionate attack only paused Mira's greeting for a moment, however. It's so good to see you, dear, Mira exclaimed, taking Sky into her arms. Sky hugged her tightly in return. You too, honey. I was really worried about you. Worried? Whatever for? Mira asked, pulling back to look at her friend curiously. I haven't been able to get in touch with you for like a week, Sky said seriously. Knowing you guys and everything that's going on, anything could have happened. Mira closed a hand over the watch that hung by its chain around her neck. But we're all right, she offered. Is something going on? Jonas asked, standing close to Sky and Mira. Sky looked to him with a suddenly roguish smile. It's good to see you too, handsome, she said. You miss me? Jonas gave an emotionless shrug. You bastard, Sky said, as if he offered a challenge. You said, with everything going on, Jonas pressed with strained patience. What's going on? You know, the war, Sky said, looking confused. What war? Mira asked, innocent as a kitten. Kali stopped nuzzling at Twist and looked to Mira as if surprised. Sky glanced at Mira, Jonas, and Twist in turn as if looking for something. You really don't know? Sky asked. How could you not know? I heard you guys were at the center of everything. I mean, you usually are anyway, she added offhandedly. I tell you, sometimes I feel like a side character in your life story. Someone else asked? Jonas said listlessly to the others. Maybe she'll answer one of you. The Fae are attacking the sighted. Oh, that's a different voice, sorry. Who said this? The Fae are attacking the sighted, a new voice said. We will change the voice later. Everyone turned to find that the two men from the other airship had boarded the Icarus. The young man stood quietly, dressed in plain but rugged clothing that was stained slightly with what might be oil. Judging by his smooth features and dark eyes, Twist guessed he might have Eastern heritage. The older man, however, looked to be just as British as Twist, and his accent confirmed it. His eyes were silver, with the slightest hint of blue, and as sharp as a knife's edge. His once black hair was now speckled with gray under his black hat, and his matching black suit was trim and elegantly cut. Holy hell, is you from the future? Jonas whispered urgently to Twist. Twist shot him a startled glance and then looked back at the cold, poised, and now silent older man. The stranger looked back at Jonas distastefully and didn't retort. This is Thomas and Eddie, Sky mentioned, gesturing to first to the older man and then the younger. They're my crew. She then pointed out Twist, Jonas, Mira, and Kima to her crew. Jonas quickly named Pamut, Miguel, and Robin, giving no background on any of them. You said the sighted are being attacked, Miguel asked Thomas the moment there was a pause in the introductions. Thomas nodded solemnly, but didn't otherwise reply. It started about the time I lost contact with you, Sky said, looking to Mira. Aiden sent out a warning to everyone. He told us all to wear these charms, she added, pulling a chain up from under her collar to reveal a silver fey invisibility charm. But it's the sighted who are really in trouble. They're getting attacked randomly. There's no rhyme or reason for any of it. No one knows who will be next. All we know is they seem to be looking for you two, she added to Twist and Jonas. The Rooks are trying to fight, but this is global. Mira listened to this, growing more and more distressed. Twist moved to her side, placing a hand on her back and bracing against her dread. Kali followed beside him, looking up at him somehow piteously despite the fact that her furry face should have been incapable of emotion. The others looked to each other, sharing their own concern, while Jonas scowled at nothing. Wait, Robin said softly, drawing Sky's attention. You know Aiden? Like, the Aiden? Sky shrugged. Sure, he's the leader of the Rooks. Robin's face washed over with amazement. Wow. Jonas stirred from his dark thoughts to frown at Robin. You don't know that sights are real, but you know of Aiden? While Sky and her crew found this odd, Robin nodded earnestly. Sure, I know who he is, he explained with a serious tone. Aiden is the reason Rooks are good guys at all. He was the one who brought them out of the shadows and turned them into a prominent peacekeeping force. And without the Rooks, I don't know how we could have ever won the war. Hell, Britain would have been devastated without their help. Sky hooked a thumb at Robin and looked to Jonas. What he's talking about. It's complicated, Jonas answered with a sigh and a shake of his head. He's sort of from the future. I still say it's you guys who's from the past, Robin grumbled. Oh, wait, what? Robin asked, startled. Miguel's sharp eyes were trained warningly on Jonas. Robin, Jonas asked, that world war you keep talking about, were the Fae involved with it? Robin's face darkened as if he were offended by the question. No, that war was no fairy tale. It was good old-fashioned humans fighting humans. Twist looked to Robin, startled to see such a sober response from a young man who is usually at ease and humorous with everything. Well, that's some good news, Jonas said, looking away from Robin to Twist. Unless Robin's teachers lied to him again, this thing with the Fae isn't going to last forever. That's a very good point, Mira agreed, nodding. Twist nodded as well, feeling a whisper of relief in Mira's otherwise unnerved emotions. So, Sky, Jonas asked, looking to her now. Not that it's not fun to see you and all, but why are you here exactly? Sky's face took a knowing smirk. Don't worry, handsome. I'm not here to ask you for anything or tell you that Aiden wants you to do anything. And if you're not in this war already, I'm sure as hell not going to drag you into it. I just kept hearing all this stuff about sighted people being attacked, and I couldn't talk to Mira to see if you were all right. She paused to give a sigh. I was worried about you guys. What's wrong with your watch? She asked, looking to Mira. I broke it, Mira muttered unhappily, clutching at the watch again. There was a fire, and we had to jump out of a window, and I sort of landed on it. Twist tried not to make eye contact when Sky glanced to him. The fire, Nassau? Sky asked. Twist and his crew looked to her in surprise. I've been trying to track you down for days, Sky explained. I found out that you were in the fire, Nassau. Then you bought a new inn for a random lady, she added with a confused expression. And then you bought this ship and took off, she said with a gesture to the Icarus. Lucky it's a pretty unique design, or I wouldn't have been able to track you all once you renamed it in London. But I finally worked out that you left London headed west, and since we were still in the Caribbean, we managed to ask some Rook scouts to look out for you so we could head you off. Holy hell, Jonas muttered, looking disturbed. I thought you might be dead, Sky grumbled at him. Jonas crossed his arm, putting on a smug expression. You know I'm indestructible. Sky glared back at him, making him work to avoid her eyes, and advanced on him with an admonishing finger pointed at his nose. You're going to need saving one of these days, and I'm going to do the damn saving. Of course, Jonas said with a sigh. Damn it, pretty, Sky snapped, looking as if she might leap at him just the way Collie had leaped at Twist. A flash of fright shot through the buzzing at Twist's neck, and Jonas moved swiftly, stepping back and away with his hands raised submissively. All right, calm down, will you? I'm fine. We're all here. Sky seemed to find his sudden surrender slightly confusing. Twist found it odd as well, until Jonas glanced past Sky at Kima. Twist looked to her as well to find her staring at Jonas with a taut and watchful energy. Yes, Twist said, drawing Sky's attention now. I'm sorry we worried you. You were worried, but we really are quite all right. We're all carrying charms like that one, he added with a nod to the Fey invisibility charm that hung around Sky's neck on its chain. That's probably why we haven't been affected. Well, good, Sky said, releasing her built-up tension in a sigh. Can I see that, honey? She asked Mira, pointing to the necklace watch. Mira took it off and handed it to her. Sky took the watch, flicking the latch twice to reveal first the watch face and then the electric blue light. As always, the rain-like sound that was supposed to appear did not. Eddie, Sky asked, turning to her own crew, can you fix this? Eddie took it from Sky and closed the watch, flipping it over to pry the back off with his fingernails. Twist grimaced to see the young man's dirty, oil-stained fingers so close to the delicate mechanisms, but no one else seemed to notice. Eddie gave a thoughtful tone. The mechanics look all right, he said, his voice bearing no accent at all to Twist's ears. In fact, they look perfect. Did someone try to repair this? I did, Twist answered, desperate not to cringe as he said it. Did you replace the glass? Eddie asked him. Yes, it was cracked in half, Twist replied. Well, there you go, Eddie said, putting on a smile. If the glass broke, then the circle must have broken too. I can recharge it, he told Sky. It should be fine. Thanks, Eddie, Sky said, sounding relieved. Twist felt a ripple of joy in Mira's spirit at the news. Here we're going to take a quick chapter break. Oh my, I think I may have mixed up some of my voices there. I was a little confused as to the two new characters, the young man, Thomas and Eddie, the old man and the young man, respectively. I did not have voices prepared for them at all, but hopefully they will not be reoccurring characters. We will see. Mm. There we go. Just took a sip of my tea. And as always, I want to thank you all for joining this reading stream, whether you're here live or you're listening to the VOD on Twitch or YouTube. Again, I do appreciate all the support that you give these channels. And I do hope that you are enjoying the story as well as the reading of this story. I think I have to sneeze. And now it does not want to come out. Sneeze, if you would be so kind, would you please come out of my nose? It does not want to come out of my nose. Okay. Well, we'll see if it comes out during the next chapter. Let's set this here. With that, I believe we are ready to go into the next chapter. What exactly does that do? Twist asked Eddie. Eddie continued to turn the hand crank on the small but solid block of machinery that sat on his workbench in the attic of the three-story airship. The roof was low and sloping, making it difficult to stand anywhere but in the center, next to the hot air burner that sat under an opening in the center of the roof. Twist sat beside Eddie at his workbench, which stood to one side, where the roof was low enough to make them stoop before they sat down. Dirty, blunt tools meant for engines and machines lay haphazardly about on the workbench or were clustered in upright holders like brutal bouquets. Mira's watch lay open on the wooden surface of the workbench, with no cloth to protect it from the stains that littered the wood. It's like a generator, Eddie answered, still turning the crank, which was making a regular, pulsing, whirring sound now. You need a complete circle to get the spill to charge at all. When the glass broke, the circle broke. I'm going to recharge the circle so that the rest of the spill can function. So, it is magic or electricity? Twist asked. Both, Eddie answered, finally stopping the crank. I don't know who came up with it, we just use it. He plucked a metal stick with. No, I read that correctly. Apologies. He plucked a metal stick with a needle like end off of the side of the block. A thin rubber wrapped wire kept the stick connected to the block. Eddie then touched the end of the needle to each of the tiny crystals inside the back of the watch. Each crystal gave a single ringing note as he did this, sounding like a distant harp. Eddie then snapped the watch back closed, turned the watch over, and opened the front cover to reveal the glass face. He then carefully ran the needle around the very edge of the glass with one long, high ringing tone. There, Eddie said, putting the stick back to the side of the block. He picked up the watch again and flicked the latch to flip over the clock face. As always, a bright electric blue light poured out of the watch, but this time the sound of rain came with it. Twist felt a wave of relief to hear it. Rook Central, said a voice from within the watch. Just doing an equipment check, Eddie replied. Can you hear me? Loud and clear, the voice inside the watch answered. Thanks, Eddie offered before flicking the latch again, flipping the clock face back into view and shutting off the rain sound. He handed the watch to Twist. There you go, good as new. Thank you, Twist said earnestly. You did a good job with the rest of the watch, Eddie said before patting at the block with the crank. But without one of these, you never could have recharged the spell. Twist nodded, feeling somewhat better knowing this. His skills hadn't failed him at all. He really had been simply missing the proper tools. As he followed Eddie down the spiral stairs, down through a narrow well-like landing on the second floor, surrounded by four closed doors, and back down to the first level of the airship, Twist quietly rubbed the case of the little watch with his sleeve to brush off any dirt. Sky and Mirror were sitting and talking at a table that stood to one side of the large open room that made up the lowest level. A tiny kitchen and some cupboards were clustered against one of the four flat walls and beside the table. A bookcase filled to bursting took up another wall, while two high-backed red velvet chairs stood beside it. Before it. Collie sat up in one chair, watching the others through her glassy brown eyes, while Thomas sat in the other, poring over a large tome that lay open on his knee. Levers, pulleys, and wheels that obviously control the balloon and the rest of the airship clung to another wall like jungle moss, while a small desk covered in maps, with more maps and charts pinned to the wall above, took up the last wall. Between these two stood the helm, making navigation appear rather convenient, even with one pilot. Robin and Jonas both stood at the helm as if curious about it, being pilots themselves. Eddie went to the kitchen after he and Twist alighted off of the spiral stairs, and Twist stepped closer to Mira. Mira and Sky both paused, turning to look at him. Here you are, dear, Twist said, offering her the watch. Good as new. It's fixed, Mira gasped in glee, jumping to her feet and rushing to Twist's side. She took the watch from him and cooed at it like a baby bird, and then she looked to Twist as if he'd just given her a rare and beautiful treasure. She then drew him into her embrace, her joy so bright that it sent flashes of light through Twist's vision, while the raw energy of it washed over him like a cold, refreshing ocean wave. Twist weathered her excitement gladly, delighting in the shivers her joy sent up his spine. Still clutching her watch tightly in her hand, Mira pulled back to kiss his cheek before releasing him to put the long chain back around her neck so the watch hung over her heart. Twist steadied himself with a hand on the back of a chair as Mira's joy drained out of his sight. The moment it was gone, the world felt darker. Sky had stood up as well and was now joining in Mira's delight with her own smiles and hugs. You all right, buddy? Robin asked, his voice concerned enough to draw Twist's attention. Robin was watching Jonas carefully, one hand on his arm, while Jonas seemed dazed. Jonas nodded, looking to Twist with an expression of wonder. Twist smiled guiltily and looked away, realizing that not only had Mira's joy rushed through his sight, but the echo of it had struck Jonas as well. Now I won't have to worry about you so much, Sky was saying to Mira when Twist looked back at her. A chuckle sounded from Thomas's direction, but he didn't look up from his book. All the same, Sky shot him a pout. Collie pouted also, despite the fact that her face was simply incapable of showing such an emotion. Eddie laughed, putting down a glass of something on the table as he stepped closer to Sky and the others. Oh, you still worry, Eddie said to Sky, still smiling even after she turned a warning glare on him. You always worry. I do not, Sky snapped, crossing her arms. Yes, you do, Jonas agreed, looking like himself once again. Eddie snickered at this, but Sky turned her glare on Jonas. Before she could throw any punches, however, Mira laughed coyly into a hand and reached out to take Sky's arm, pulling her closer as she smiled back at Sky's sour expression. You only worry because you laugh so easily, dear, Mira said with perfect confidence. There is nothing in the world wrong with that. Sky's belligerence couldn't stand up to Mira's light, and Sky finally relaxed. You know, she replied, sounding calm now, if anyone else says something like that to me, I'd punch him in the nose. Mira jerked, startled. But you're all right, honey, Sky added with a smug grin, patting at Mira's hand. Mira smiled again, while Twist relaxed as well. Eddie only shook his head, seeming to find nothing odd in Sky. Thomas still didn't look up, but Twist spotted a smirk at the edge of his lips. Jonas stepped forward while Robin followed with him. While Robin followed with him. Well, Jonas said, it looks like everything's put to right. We should probably get going. Twist looked at Jonas curiously. Weren't they still days ahead of schedule? Surely there was no reason to rush off away from friends. Mira, still clinging to Sky's arm, looked instantly distressed by this. Sky turned to look at Jonas as well. Why are you in a hurry to leave? Sky asked, her keen blue eyes locked on him. Excuse me. Jonas pulled his goggles down from his brow to cover his eyes. We got to get to Argentina as quick as we can. But Miguel said we're ahead of schedule, Mira said hopefully. Have I done something to piss you off? Sky asked Jonas, her eyes still trained on him like a rifle sight. Where's my next page? Silence fell over them all as everyone looked to Jonas. Even Thomas looked up from his book, and Collie's expressionless face appeared somehow intent as she stared at Jonas as well. Twist felt the buzzing in his neck grow taut and anxious as Jonas held silent for a moment, seeming to stare back at Sky through his opaque black goggles. No, he answered finally, his voice devoid of any telling emotion at all. Sky didn't look convinced when Jonas failed to elaborate further. Then what is it? She asked. Because the last time I saw you, we spent nearly a month together, but you hardly even said goodbye when I left. We used to be close, then suddenly we weren't anymore. And now you're just dying to take off. It's pretty hard not to take that kind of stuff personally. While Jonas took a silent but heavy breath and rubbed warily at his brow, Twist was astonished by how much Sky's words sounded like Arabelle's. She had much the same conversation with her brother many times over. Jonas had pulled away from her in exactly the same way that he now was from Sky. The uneasy, scurrying energy and the buzzing at Twist's neck felt the same as well. I don't have any problem with you, Sky, Jonas said, sounding tired now. I'm just not like you. I don't get close to people. I don't see the point. Sky glanced at Twist, but with his goggles on, Jonas couldn't possibly see it. Twist is different, and you know it, Jonas added tartly anyway. That's a rotten way to live, sugar, Sky pointed out. It works for me, Jonas said darkly, the buzzing at Twist's neck turning cold. Stay as long as you like, Puppet, he added to Mira, before stepping away to the connection to the Icarus without another word. Twist instantly wondered if he ought to follow him, but seeing the unhappy look on Mira's face, he remained. Robin and Eddie both looked confused and awkward while Thomas seemed thoughtful. Sky watched Jonas leave with a frown, but made no attempt to stop him. Don't let him bother you, dear, Mira said softly to Sky. He doesn't really mean any of that. He's just too complicated for his own good sometimes. Why, you and Collie are very best friends. Sky smiled back at her, clearly choosing to let Mira cheer her up despite the lingering bitterness that Jonas had left behind him. Mira did remain with Sky for a while longer, the two women sitting together and absorbing each other's full attention with constant conversation. Eddie busied himself with various things about the ship. Thomas eventually stopped staring thoughtfully into space and went back to reading his book. Collie fell asleep, curled up on the floor at Sky's feet. When Robin wandered back to the Icarus, Twist followed after him. Robin vanished into his cabin, but Twist continued on. Twist found Jonas in the kitchen, sitting at a table with Kima and Pamut, with a chessboard on the table between them. Jonas didn't look up as Twist walked into the room, but instead watched suspiciously as Pamut placed a knight. Pamut looked up at Jonas with mild concern, but Kima glanced back over her shoulder at Twist and offered a light smile. Interesting, Jonas purred, his eyes a pale blue and the buzzing at Twist's neck now smooth and content. I can do that, right? Pamut asked. It's a legal move, Jonas answered, nodding. He leaned closer, looking over the board carefully. It's just interesting. Twist stood next to Kima, looking over the chessboard as well. Jonas was threatening one of Pamut's bishops with a pawn, and most of his power pieces were scattered about the board in a weak but chaotic arrangement. Pamut's knight was now threatening the pawn that was troubling his bishop, but most of his power pieces weren't even in play. Have you played this game? Kima asked Twist. Oh, yes, Twist answered. I usually like chess if I'm not playing against Jonas. What's that supposed to mean? Jonas snapped up. Jonas snapped up at him, startled. You do mad things all the time and generally confuse the devil out of me. Yeah, I do that, don't I? Jonas mused, clearly pleased. He then reached out and moved his own knight to directly threaten Pamut's queen, otherwise ignoring Pamut's defensive attack. Seeing this, Pamut jerked in surprise. But what about that? He asked, pointing to the tobacco that still surrounded his bishop and Jonas's pawn. It's just a pawn, Jonas answered with a shrug. I'd rather have your queen. Pamuk looked horrified by this. Kima gave a sigh and glanced back up at Twist. Jonas wanted to play with the sticks again, she began. I want to instruct your son in the valuable art of swordplay, Jonas corrected her. Yeah, that's fun, Pamuk added happily. Jonas looked to Kima smugly. But I still think that's very violent and dangerous, Kima went on, staring directly at Jonas and forcing him to look back to the board. So when he suggested a game instead, she said to Twist, I thought that might be less dangerous and violent. Silly me. Twist nearly offered a sympathetic comment, but Jonas spoke first. He glanced toward He glanced toward Kima, his naked, now deep blue gaze dangerously close to catching hers. You're just as dangerous and violent as I am, Jonas said, his voice rich with open approval. You're a formidable warrior with lightning scars, for heaven's sake. Why can't your son be just as amazing as you are? Pamuk looked to his mother, waiting for her answer with great interest. Kima leaned closer to Jonas, her knowing look still holding strong. So to you, I'm only amazing because I'm capable of violence? Is that really the only way to be amazing? Does nothing else have value? Jonas sat back in his chair, seeming to reel slightly from her words. He paused for a moment, and Twist watched in astonishment as Jonas struggled to find a way out of her trap. Any direct rebuttal would only make him sound weak, forcing Jonas to follow her logic no matter what. Pamut seemed to ponder this question as well, clearly unsure of the answer himself. Jonas seemed to notice, watching the boy for an instant. Finally, Jonas shook his head and picked up his king off the board. Here, he said, handed the piece to Kima. That's a checkmate if I've ever seen one. Kima smiled back at him while Jonas kept his eyes well away. She took the piece from him and put it back on the board where it had been. Well? Pamut asked softly, drawing his mother's attention. What else is amazing besides power? Kiba took a breath, gathering an answer, but again Jonas spoke first, counting on his fingers and speaking so quickly that the words obviously took no effect for him to gather. Bravery in the face of uncertain future, the ability to swallow a grudge if it's no longer needed, taking the time to listen and think things through instead of just reacting, deep human understanding, compassion, unshakable patience, and resilience against all odds. You know, all of this, generally, Jonas added, gesturing vaguely at Kima. Pumba quietly looked at his mother as if appraising her, while Kima stared at Jonas, stunned by this unusually expensive compliment. Jonas was resting his chin on a hand, covering a grin that Twist knew was fighting for freedom. The buzzing in Twist's neck still felt smooth, warm, and bright. There wasn't even a hint of his previous anxiety left in him now. And rather than put him on edge, the very act of giving up his battle with Kima made the blue in Jonas's eyes deeper and put his spirit more at ease. It's your move, Kima mentioned to Pamut. Oh! Pamut gasped, looking back to the board. While Pamut looked over his options and tried to work out a way to save his queen, Kima silently reached out to Jonas's left hand, which lay casually on the tabletop. She slipped her fingers neatly through his, watching as her son made another move. Twist felt the buzzing at his neck blush with a deeper, fuller warmth, but Jonas made no obvious reaction to her touch. Instead, he curled his own fingers around hers and made an encouraging comment to Pamut about his choice of move. Here we're going to take a break. I also want to say, oh, I I originally when I started reading the series, I did not think Jonas and Kiba would definitely be an item. But as they slowly became a package ready for shipment, It was very clear that this was going to happen from the get-go. It helps to explain so much. And I believe we talked about a little bit about fan theory last time about the Storm Pomut's interactions with Jonas, how he behaved around both of them, and why he behaved around Storm the way he did. I just find this very interesting. It's something that, again, I do enjoy stories that I cannot see what will happen next. I cannot necessarily deduce it. I like going along for the ride in the story, and if I cannot suspend belief and just enjoy the story and say, "Oh," I do not enjoy it. But before we continue, I want to thank you all for joining this reading stream. Hope that you are enjoying the story as well as the reading of this story. And not also support. I also appreciate the support that you give these channels, whether they are likes or follows, subscriptions, just have it play in the background, word of mouth, tell friends and family, tell your dog and kitten that I do a reading stream on Twitch and YouTube. I wonder what a reading stream for pets would sound like. But that is a shower thought for when I jump in the shower. Hmm. Meanwhile, I am catching up on my tea. I believe that was a long chapter, the last one we did. Hmm. It's still good tea. Tonight, we are drinking the Clockmaker tea. It is one of the stream favorites, or at least one of my favorites on the stream. And this tea is inspired by the series that we're reading now. Thus, Clockmaker, Clockwork Twist, Twist works with clocks, is very clocky. However, the ingredients for this tea are roasted green tea, orange peel, black tea, pure tea, rose petal, and pine smoke. Now, you may be wondering, my Taka, that sounds absolutely divine. Where, oh where, on this green and blue earth, can I find tea that delicious sounding? Well, allow me the opportunity to tell you about a little tea shop in Seattle, Washington, called Friday Afternoon. That is right. It is time for our not sponsored. I promise this is a sponsorship, but it seems like a sponsorship, but it's not a sponsorship. It's not a bribery sponsorship, non sponsorship. For Friday Afternoon, the tea shop in Seattle, Washington. Now, if you go to their website, www.fridaytea.com, you'll find a wide variety of teas I'm sure will tickle your fancy and taste buds as well. Tonight, I want to tell you about the Swan Prince. And no, that's the name of the tea. I promise it is. And it is inspired by Princess Tutu. I do not know how many people have seen the Princess Tutu anime. I will say this, Princess Tutu, when I first watched an episode or two, I thought, oh, I won't like this. But honestly, it is worth a watch. That is a good anime. It is different, for sure. And I definitely think it's worth it. But that's beyond the point. Instead, the Swan Prince tea is what we're here to talk about. So, this tea is part of the summer fandom rotation, which means it is available from now until September 3rd. And once September 3rd comes, it goes. Oh, apologies there. Once September 3rd comes and goes, the tea will not be available again, most likely, until next summer. However, the description of this tea goes as follows. We like our princes, like this Princess Tutu anime lead. Smooth and floral with creamy sweetness that never becomes overwhelming. This tea brews up like a blossoming rose, revealing one layer of its personality at a time over as many infusions as you like. You may never know all of its secrets, but you'll sure have fun trying. Ingredients: oolong tea, shaved coconut, rose petal, natural coconut flavoring. It's a lot of coconut there. So obviously, if you have an allergy to coconut, this will not be the tea for you, but there are reviews. 4 reviews, I see. All 5 stars. Oh, this review is from this month. Literally, July 4th, 2025. 5 stars, this person wrote, delicious, delectable, even a bit decadent. If there's something I love, it's rose, coconut, and or oolong. So all 3 together sounded delightful. I have rose oolongs and coconut oolongs that I still drink, but the Swan Prince is my new favorite. It's absolutely delightful to sip on, re-steeps well, and definitely has made it into the repurchase soon list for me. That's a very nice endorsement there. How about this one from last year, October? So October 2024, 5 stars. So good. It's very hard to find a good coconut tea. This is a good one. Great with a hint of cream and honey. Now, I will admit, I didn't know there was coconut tea. I would not imagine coconut and tea to be a combination I would ever try, but honestly, I might. 5 stars from July of 2023, an absolute favorite of mine. I got a little taster of this from the mystery sampler once, and it's been one of my favorites ever since. The wonderful quality of the oolong bring allows it to be steeped over and over again without the flavor weakening. It merely mellows and shifts slowly with each brew. The coconut and rose flavors continually fading out after a few brews, but still taste delicious and not at all washed out. And the final review from 2021, August, 5 stars. Wow, they begin with coconut with an exclamation point afterwards. I am not the biggest fan of oolong, but the coconut made me try this, and I cannot wait to finish off my supply to buy more. It has a wonderful floral and coconut nose, with it mellowing out. Nose? I'm reading it right here. That says nose. Coconut nose. Maybe smell? It has well, I'll read it verbatim. It has a wonderful floral and coconut nose with it mellowing out after brewing, but lingering well into the 5th steeping. I think it's supposed to be, it was a wonderful floral and coconut smell or aroma or I'm not too sure what the nose was supposed to be. It is literally Nose. Odd. But you know what? They gave it 5 stars. And again, this tea is called the Swan Prince. And it is available at Friday afternoon on their website, www.fridaytea.com. Again, the website is www.friday, like the day, and tea, like the drink.com. And again, they do not put me up to do this. I do not go through my long tirade saying that it's not a sponsorship. I promise it's not a sponsorship because they didn't sponsor me, but it seems like a sponsorship, not sponsorship. I do that part for fun and to slightly deprive myself of air. But they do not pay me. They do not bribe me. They do not beg and plead with me to talk about their teas on stream. No, these channels are not sponsored by anyone whatsoever. I just enjoy their teas. And so I talk about them on the reading stream. And now you too can enjoy their teas. www.fridaytea.com, Friday afternoon tea shop in Seattle, Washington. Please don't sue me. And that's all. Hmm. I believe in a little bit we'll go into our next chapter, but that may be our final chapter for the evening. I'm personally hoping to do a little bit more writing slash editing after the reading stream. Personally. Slowly, we're getting there. I am. I do not know how to describe how excited I am to share my second book with the general public. I may have talked about this once before. My first book, it was a meh, it's done, it's published. Don't get me wrong, not saying that publishing a book is nothing. It is quite a feat to publish a book and have some decent reviews. I think that's a feat. But I am really looking forward to book two, being out there for people to read. We will get there. I promise we will. I might even talk to Miss Taka about having beta readers just read a copy of the book so they know what's going on, but we'll see. No, I think that comes after editing. In time. In time. I promise we will get there. Final stretch. And then let's go into our. Let's make sure this will be our final chapter. Yes, this will be our final chapter of the evening. Again, thank you for joining this reading stream. I hope that you are enjoying the story as well as the reading of this story. Let's continue. I know you rather I didn't, Twist began, speaking softly as he and Jonas walked out onto the deck to say goodbye to Sky and her crew. But I have to ask, are you ever going to tell Sky the truth? Jonas stopped, looking at Twist with an incredulous frown. Twist stopped as well. He and Jonas were out of easy earshot from the others. Sky, Kali, and Eddie had all come aboard the Icarus with Mira, and now stood with Kima, Pamut, Miguel, and Robin as they offered each other mild pleasantries. What truth? Jonas asked, his eyes narrow and gray. Twist shrugged. That you don't fancy her anymore. That you rather court Kima. That you just want to be friends with no romantic ties at all. Whatever it is, it doesn't seem fair to keep your honest feelings such a secret from her. Who says I'm courting anyone? Jonas balked. He gave every outward indication of being affronted, but a guilty anxiety scampered around in the buzzing at Twist's neck. I don't care who you pursue or who you don't, Twist said, raising his hands. I just don't see why you can't be honest with Sky. Whatever your feelings for her, she's a very close friend to all of us. She doesn't deserve to be lied to. I'm not lying to anyone, Jonas grumbled. She's not Arabelle, Twist pointed out. Will you knock it off? Jonas snapped. Twist felt the buzzing in his neck go sharp as well, and he put his hands up again. Fine, fine. Do what you like. Forget I said anything. What are you two fighting about? Sky called to Twist and Jonas. Twist looked up to find her grinning at them from the center of the group, while the others glanced back at them too. Kali moved swiftly, padding closer to Twist at a trot. Twist instantly braced for another affectionate attack, but the tiger stopped right before him and gave a mournful, whining tone, looking at him like a giant, unhappy puppy. Twist smiled down at the animal, guessing at her feelings. There, Twist offered, reaching out to pat at her furry brow. Kali started purring and nuzzled against his hand. I'll see you again, you know, Twist added gently. Kali looked up at him for an instant, and then opened her fang-filled mouth and closed it quickly on his wrist. Terror shot up Twist's spine, but the tiger's teeth didn't do anything more than hold his flesh gently but securely. When Kali turned and began to walk away, clearly meaning to drag him back onto the other ship, Twist did his best not to struggle against her sharp, powerful fangs and look up to Sky in pitiful fright. Sky started laughing and rushed to stop Kali, patting at her nose. Now, stop that, Sky said firmly. Let go, you silly thing. Kali stopped moving, but glared up at Sky for a long moment before she opened her mouth. Twist took his hand away immediately and tried to calm his racing heart. Sorry about that, Sky offered to Twist around a stray chuckle. You are right. Yes, thank you, Twist muttered, wiping at his damp wrist and hand with his handkerchief. At this rate, he was going to run out of clean ones. But at least his skin was unmarred by anything but tiger saliva. I'm sorry, Collie, Vera said sweetly to the forlorn looking tiger, petting at the fluffy fur of his neck. But there's only one Twist, and he's got to stay here with me, you know. I saw him first, after all, she added, her voice taking on a cooing tone. Collie gave a grumbling sound but didn't otherwise retort. I can't work it out, Robin said to Miguel as they both stood watching Twist with obvious alarm. Is it that the tiger likes him so much, or is it bad? I rather it like him than not, Miguel answered somewhat uncertainly. Twist began to wonder about it himself, but then he looked back to Collie's big brown eyes. The first time they ever met had been at one of Twist's lowest moments, in a dark room under the shifting aurora lights, when Twist had begun to fear that he lost his mind. In that moment, the tiger had seemed to stare right into his soul and decided to comfort him. For all her strange, voiceless, magical nature, Twist had always felt that she cared for him in her own way. Maybe she saw human beings as the pests, just as they saw her as Sky's pet. Maybe Collie simply thought that Twist was darling in the same way that he might like the look of a puppy. Or maybe, being a familiar instead of an ordinary tiger, she understood him on a much deeper, more personal level. Either way, Twist saw nothing but friendship in her eyes. Overcome with the feeling of that subtle connection, Twist dropped to one knee and wrapped his arms around the tiger's powerful shoulders. Collie moved instantly, pressing in and rubbing her big, warm, soft, furry neck against him. Twist's sight sparkled with strange, harmless, colorful nonsense in her touch, and he couldn't help but smile when he stood up again. Collie seemed somehow much happier now, her rope-like tail swinging swiftly, but she didn't try to accost him again. Twin, identical, adoring tones rose suddenly from Mira and Sky, startling Twist. He glanced up to find both women clutching each other's hands and staring at him as if he were the single most darling thing they ever seen. A sputtering, barking laugh erupted from Jonas, snapping both of them out of their trance to glare at him. Collie gave a low growl, and Jonas stepped swiftly away from her. But he took control of his laughter as well, fighting for calm. Sorry, Jonas offered, hands raised, his voice tight but smooth. Anyway, Sky said pointedly, looking back to Twist, you guys be careful, will you? I'm glad you're all protected from the Fae, but it's getting crazy out there. Watch your backs. We will, Twist assured her. Thank you for the warning. There we go. Of course, sugar, Sky replied, looking like she'd like to hug him in the parting as well. Thankfully, however, she didn't. After all, Collie would kill me if I let something happen to you. Jonas started chuckling again. I'm going to slap you, Sky growled, turning on him. Jonas hurried to stand behind Kima, looking over her shoulder at Sky. You're the one telling jokes, he shouted back. Get away, Kima said quickly, trying to get herself out from between Jonas and Sky. The lady has a tiger. I don't want to be in her way. Jonas looked back at Kima, startled and hurt. You won't protect me? Not against a tiger. Kima balked. Protect herself. Jonas's mouth fell open in shock. You're a smart woman, Sky mentioned to Kima. It's dangerous to get involved with this guy. Jonas felt quiet, but Kima looked back at Sky with the slightest hint of suspicion in her eyes. Well said, Kima answered, a smug smile snapping into place like a mask. Sky, however, didn't seem to sense anything amiss and took this as a camaraderie remark. But now that Jonas's distraction had faded, Mira began to deflate into sorrow. She and Sky hugged each other tightly, promising to talk every day now that Mira's watch was mended, and lamenting that they each had business to attend to that would keep them apart. Twist got caught up in some of it and offered his own sentiments to Sky in reply. It felt like very little time at all, however, before everyone but Jonas and Sky had said their goodbyes. In the end, Jonas offered a light and meaningless smile while wearing his goggles and waved to her, making no attempt to share any more. Sky looked at him as if he offered a challenge, and she stepped closer, drawing him into a hug before he could protest. Stop being a jerk and stay safe, all right? She grumbled, pulling back and glaring at his goggles. Fine, fine, Jonas said on a sigh. Watch out for fairies. They're worse than they sound. You too, sugar, Sky replied. I don't want to keep having to come and rescue you all the time. Oh, yes, you do, Jonas said with a smirk. You bastard, Sky said, shaking her head. Jonas made no complaint against this insult. Sky let out one last sigh as she turned away, gave Mira a final hug, and then stepped back onto her own airship. The two ships were disconnected, and Sky and Kali stood to watch as their ship glided away from the Icarus. Twist put a comforting arm around Mira, weathering her melancholy as the both of them waved back to Sky until the distance grew too great. Help me get us going again? Jonas asked Twist. Certainly, Twist replied, finally leaving Mira to attend to the engines. Since he left the fires burning low and the exhaust chambers were still warm, it took little time at all to bring the Icarus back up to full speed. Twist was just about to climb the stairs back up to the upper bridge when he heard Kima's voice speaking softly, and he paused. He didn't hear her words, but it had sounded like a question. Yeah, I'm fine, Jonas replied easily. But I thought you were friends, Kima mentioned. Twist held perfectly still to hear her properly, and began to wonder if he ought to excuse himself to leave them alone. The last time I saw her in Australia, we're friends, Jonas answered, cutting her off. But that's all. I guess she wants more than that, or something. You don't? Kima asked, sounding remarkably impartial. There was a long pause in which Twist desperately wished that there was another way off the bridge. The porthole windows didn't even open. I like my life the way it is right now, Jonas answered finally. There was another pause, but suddenly the buzzing at Twist's neck bloomed with warmth. Twist couldn't see. Twist couldn't see anything up through the metal stairs. You do know that I was joking, right? Kima asked, a smile now coloring her voice. I'd take on a tiger if you really needed me to. Twist heard Jonas' soft chuckle and felt slightly lightheaded as a bright, warm rush of delight bubbled through the buzzing at his neck. My hero, Jonas said, sarcasm ringing in his voice. Then he let out a startled sound that was accompanied by the sound of a neat strike, which sounded like a playful slap of the arm to Twist. You're being a bastard again, Kima pointed out. You like me because I'm a bastard. Wrong again, Kima countered. Shall I list off all your good qualities in order, or will you cut it out? No, I give up, Jonas answered swiftly. Please don't. Twist is eavesdropping on us. Startled, Twist couldn't help himself from letting out a frantic gasp. He gritted his teeth and walked up the stairs, leveling a glare at Jonas when he reached the top. Kima only looked slightly awkward, as if she were already recovering from her surprise. I bloody well was not eavesdropping, Twist growled. If you weren't, then how did you hear me say that you were? Jonas asked back, his eyes brilliantly blue. There's no other way out of there, Twist grumbled with a gesture to the lower bridge. Kima chuckled at this, but cut it off. I'm sorry, Twist. I forgot you were there, she said, looking earnestly regretful. It's fine, Twist said on a sigh. He gave Jonas another glare. Can I go? Please, Jonas said with an inviting gesture to the door. Twist left without a moment's hesitation, glad to be free, but the fact that his curiosity was somewhat sated by what he overheard made it easier to relax again. I believe this was actually a good chapter to end on. I took a peek at the next chapter, and it is definitely longer than 15 minutes for reading. However, we are concluding tonight's reading stream. I hope that you all enjoyed the stream as well as this story. Again, we will have the reading stream again next Sunday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, where we will continue reading Clockwork Twist, Book 10, Time. Again, thank you for joining this reading stream, whether you're here live on Twitch or YouTube, or you're listening to the VOD. And I do appreciate all the support that these channels receive. And I haven't said this in a while, but if you happen to have a book or a story or know someone who writes books and stories and you think, wow, I would like this guy to read their book on stream, be sure be sure to leave me a message either on Twitch, YouTube, or Blue Sky. I do have a Blue Sky account as well. And with that, I believe that is everything. I wish you all a wonderful evening, a wonderful day. Sorry, I have a little bit of gas there. But I wish you all a wonderful evening, a wonderful day. Stay safe out there. Take care of your loved ones and take care of each other. Until next time, bye bye and see you then.